What started as an old podcast misunderstanding has suddenly turned into one of the hottest conversations in hip-hop. For years, many fans believed the tension between Rick Ross and DC Young Fly had quietly faded away. But after Ross released new music, listeners immediately noticed a line that many interpreted as a direct reference to DC, and the internet exploded with reactions. Some people think it was nothing more than clever promotion for a new album, while others believe Ross intentionally reopened unfinished business that dates back to the unforgettable 85 South Show interview. Now everyone is asking the same question. Was this just entertainment, or is a real rivalry starting all over again? Even more interesting, DC Young Fly has built his reputation on quick comebacks and fearless humor, so fans are wondering whether he'll respond with jokes, a podcast appearance, or something nobody expects. In today's video, we're breaking down how this entire situation developed, why people are connecting it to events from years ago, and what could happen next as social media continues to fuel the debate. Stay with us, because the full timeline reveals details that many people have completely overlooked. When a celebrity mentions another public figure in a song, fans immediately begin searching for hidden meanings. That's exactly what happened after Rick Ross released his latest project. Within hours, social media users started highlighting one particular lyric that many believed was aimed at DC Young Fly. Whether that was Ross's intention or not, the conversation spread across YouTube, X, Instagram, and hip-hop forums almost instantly. The reason this caught so much attention wasn't simply because of one lyric. Many fans remembered that these two personalities already shared an awkward history. As soon as the album dropped, people began revisiting old interviews and podcast clips, trying to connect the dots between the past and the present. To understand why this moment became such a major talking point, we have to rewind several years. Back in 2021, Rick Ross appeared on the 85 South Show, one of the most recognizable comedy podcasts in hip-hop culture. Hosted by DC Young Fly, Carlos Miller, and Chico Bean, the show has built its reputation on relaxed conversations, comedy, and candid storytelling. Whenever a major rapper appears, fans usually expect memorable moments that get shared online for weeks. Ross arrived, the conversation began, and everything appeared completely normal. The hosts welcomed him with respect, jokes were exchanged, and viewers expected another classic interview. But things reportedly changed midway through the recording. According to discussions that later surfaced online, Rick Ross stepped away during the interview, saying he needed a short break. At first, nobody thought much of it. Breaks happen all the time during long recordings. However, as more time passed, it became clear something unusual had happened. Instead of returning to continue the interview, Ross reportedly left the location to catch another commitment. The recording ended earlier than many expected, leaving both the hosts and viewers surprised. At that moment, there wasn't a massive public argument. There were no explosive headlines. There were no diss records. Instead, the moment quietly became one of those stories fans remembered whenever conversations about celebrity interviews came up. As months passed, many people assumed the situation had simply been forgotten. But according to later interviews, the issue wasn't really about leaving early. It was about communication. Years later, DC Young Fly explained that he understood celebrities have busy schedules. Artists travel constantly, juggle interviews, business meetings, performances, and promotional appearances. Nobody expected Ross to stay if he genuinely had another obligation. The concern, according to DC, was that a simple conversation beforehand could have avoided confusion. From his perspective, letting the hosts know exactly how much time was available would have allowed everyone to adjust the interview accordingly. That explanation changed how many fans viewed the situation. Instead of framing it as disrespect, some people began seeing it as a misunderstanding caused by poor communication. Others still believed the departure looked inconsiderate, especially because viewers were expecting a full interview. The debate never completely disappeared. It simply stayed in the background. Then another detail added even more fuel to the discussion. Reports and online conversations pointed out that after leaving the 85 South Show, Rick Ross later appeared on another podcast where he reportedly spent significantly more time answering questions. Whether that comparison was entirely fair or not became another debate altogether. Some fans argued every interview is different and scheduling conflicts happen. Others wondered why one appearance seemed shorter while another received much more time and attention. Without hearing every behind-the-scenes conversation, nobody outside those involved could know the complete story. But perception often becomes reality on the internet. Once enough people begin repeating the same narrative, it quickly becomes accepted as fact by many viewers. That is exactly what happened here. Old clips resurfaced. Reaction channels revisited the interview. Comment sections filled with thousands of opinions. Some defended Rick Ross. Others sided with DC Young Fly. And many believed both sides simply experienced an unfortunate scheduling issue that eventually became much larger than it needed to be. For several years, that was where the story remained. There were occasional jokes, a few podcast discussions, some fan theories, but nothing suggested the situation would suddenly become relevant again. That changed the moment Ross released new music. As listeners analyzed every track, one lyric immediately became the center of discussion. People debated whether the line was playful, promotional, or an intentional jab. No official explanation settled the question, leaving fans free to interpret it however they wanted. That uncertainty is exactly what keeps hip-hop conversations alive. Every lyric becomes evidence. Every interview becomes a clue. Every social media post becomes another piece of the puzzle. Soon, reaction videos began appearing everywhere. Creators broke down individual bars. Commentators revisited old podcast clips. Fans compared interviews from years apart, trying to determine whether this was simply coincidence or the continuation of an old disagreement. Regardless of where people stood, one thing became obvious. The conversation had officially returned. And unlike before, it wasn't limited to podcast listeners anymore. Now, millions of music fans were paying attention. Because once someone's name appears inside a rap lyric, speculation usually reaches an entirely different level. The biggest question was no longer what happened years ago. The new question became much bigger. Was Rick Ross intentionally reopening an old chapter with DC Young Fly? Or was the internet connecting dots that were never meant to be connected in the first place? That question would soon lead to another series of interviews, responses, and viral moments that pushed this story even further into the spotlight. As discussion surrounding the old podcast appearance continued to spread online, people waited to see whether Rick Ross would respond directly. Some expected a formal interview. Others thought he would ignore the conversation completely and focus on promoting his new music. Instead, Ross addressed the situation in a way that immediately grabbed attention. Rather than sitting behind a microphone or publishing a lengthy statement, he appeared relaxed while speaking casually on social media. The setting itself became part of the conversation because fans weren't just listening to his words. They were also reacting to how calm and unbothered he appeared. Ross explained that he accepted the podcast invitation because he wanted to show support. According to him, he wasn't focused on money or business metrics when he agreed to appear. His message suggested that he participated out of respect, not because he expected anything in return. He also reminded viewers that artists often deal with demanding schedules behind the scenes. Between interviews, travel, promotional events, business meetings, recording sessions, and personal commitments, every hour of the day is carefully planned. From his perspective, leaving early wasn't intended as an insult. It was simply part of managing multiple responsibilities. That explanation immediately divided fans. One group believed Ross made a reasonable point. After all, celebrities frequently have flights to catch, appearances to make, and contracts to fulfill. Sometimes unexpected schedule changes happen, and not every interview can last as long as originally planned. Others weren't convinced. They argued that the issue had never been about leaving. Instead, they believed the biggest concern was how the departure happened and how it appeared to everyone watching. That difference in perspective kept the debate alive. Social media quickly filled with side-by-side clips comparing Ross' explanation with earlier comments made by DC Young Fly. Reaction channels began asking the same question. Could both sides actually be telling the truth? Many creators suggested that the disagreement might have been caused by different expectations rather than personal hostility. If one side believed everything ended respectfully while the other felt communication could have been better, then both perspectives could exist at the same time. That idea made the discussion even more interesting. Instead of arguing about facts, fans began debating perception. How important is communication during high-profile interviews? Should celebrity guests always explain when they need to leave? Or is everyone simply expected to understand how busy major artists can be? Those questions sparked thousands of comments. Then another moment pushed the conversation even further. During his response, Rick Ross mixed serious points with humor. He joked about arriving without charging a fee and even laughed about details surrounding the appearance, turning what could have been a tense response into something much lighter. Those jokes quickly became viral clips. People turned short moments into memes. Content creators reacted to individual quotes. Fans repeated certain phrases across social media until they became part of the online conversation. Before long, many people weren't even discussing the original disagreement anymore. They were sharing the funniest moments from Ross' response. Meanwhile, DC Young Fly wasn't exactly known for staying silent. Throughout his career, he built a reputation through quick thinking, sharp comedy, and fearless roasting. Rather than approaching situations with anger, DC has often relied on humor to make his point. That history made fans even more curious. Would he respond with another interview? Would he joke about the situation during a live show? Or would he ignore everything completely? Speculation continued growing every day. Reaction channels uploaded new theories almost daily. Hip-hop pages reposted older clips. Comment sections became divided into two groups: Team Ross or Team DC. Some fans believed Ross had already explained himself clearly. Others felt DC still deserved a better explanation for how everything unfolded years earlier. Interestingly, many neutral viewers reached a different conclusion altogether. They argued this might simply be one of those situations where neither side intended to create controversy. Sometimes misunderstandings grow larger over time because the internet constantly revisits old moments and adds new interpretations. A clip recorded years ago suddenly looks different when viewed through today's headlines. That pattern happens often in entertainment. One old interview resurfaces. Someone makes a new comment. A lyric appears on a new album. Then millions of people begin connecting events that happened years apart. Whether those connections are completely accurate or not, they become part of public discussion. That's exactly what seemed to happen here. As Ross continued promoting his latest project, listeners paid closer attention to every interview and every lyric. Meanwhile, DC Young Fly's supporters waited to see if he would address the renewed attention. Some believed silence would be the smartest move. Others hoped for another humorous response that only DC could deliver. Regardless of which outcome people preferred, one fact couldn't be ignored. The conversation had expanded far beyond one podcast appearance. Now it had become one of the biggest talking points surrounding Rick Ross' latest music release. But just when many people believed the story was beginning to fade, another unexpected twist reignited everything. Fans listening closely to Ross' new album started pointing toward additional lyrics they believed referenced several well-known names across hip-hop. Suddenly, the focus wasn't only on DC Young Fly anymore. Listeners also began discussing possible references involving 50 Cent and Drake, opening an entirely new chapter of speculation that pushed the conversation to an even bigger audience. Just when fans thought the discussion couldn't grow any bigger, attention shifted from one lyric to the album as a whole. As listeners replayed every track, online communities began pointing out other lines they believed could reference well-known figures across hip-hop. Whether those interpretations were accurate or simply fan theories, they quickly became the center of conversation. One name that immediately resurfaced was 50 Cent. Anyone familiar with hip-hop history knows that Rick Ross and 50 Cent have experienced public disagreements over the years. Their rivalry has included interviews, social media exchanges, and lyrical responses that kept fans talking for a long time. Because of that history, listeners naturally paid closer attention whenever Ross released new music. Almost immediately, reaction channels started breaking down individual bars, asking whether Ross was revisiting old rivalries or simply using confident, competitive rap lyrics to generate excitement around his project. At the same time, another familiar name entered the conversation: Drake. Rick Ross and Drake were once viewed as one of hip-hop's strongest collaborative duos. Together, they released several memorable records that became favorites among fans. Their chemistry in the studio helped produce songs that remained popular years later. However, as time passed, public speculation suggested their relationship had cooled. Recent years brought changing alliances throughout the rap industry, and fans noticed that Ross and Drake were no longer appearing together as frequently as before. Because of those developments, listeners naturally wondered whether certain lyrics on Ross' latest album were connected to those changes. It's important to remember that unless an artist clearly identifies the target of a lyric, much of the discussion remains speculation. Hip-hop has always encouraged listeners to analyze bars, search for hidden meanings, and debate possible references. Sometimes those theories turn out to be correct. Other times, they're simply creative interpretations from passionate fans. That's part of what makes rap culture unique. Every release becomes more than music. It becomes a conversation. As clips from podcasts, live streams, and interviews continued circulating online, millions of people joined the debate. Some argued Rick Ross was simply doing what experienced artists have always done, creating lyrics that spark discussion and keep audiences engaged long after an album is released. Others believed mentioning familiar names naturally invites responses, whether intended or not. Meanwhile, attention slowly returned to DC Young Fly. Many fans felt that if his name truly appeared in a lyric, he had every reason to answer. The bigger question wasn't whether he would respond. It was how he would respond. Would he record music? Would he address everything during a comedy performance? Would he speak about it on a podcast? Or would he decide the smartest move was ignoring the entire situation and refusing to give it even more attention? Supporters seemed divided. One side hoped for a humorous comeback filled with the quick wit that made DC famous. Another side believed staying focused on comedy, television, and entertainment would be the stronger long-term decision. Throughout his career, DC Young Fly has shown that not every challenge requires anger. Sometimes humor reaches a larger audience than confrontation ever could. That possibility kept fans watching closely. At the same time, Rick Ross continued focusing on promoting his album. Regardless of where people stood in the debate, one thing became impossible to ignore. The album was generating conversation. Every reaction video, every podcast breakdown, every social media discussion, all of it kept the project trending. In today's entertainment world, attention moves incredibly fast. One headline replaces another within hours, making it difficult for any artist to remain part of the daily conversation. Yet this situation continued attracting new viewers because it blended music, podcast history, comedy, and long-standing industry relationships into one story. Even people who hadn't listened to the full album found themselves watching clips just to understand why everyone was talking about it. That's the power of internet culture. One short lyric can create thousands of videos. One podcast clip can return years later and suddenly become relevant again. One interview can completely change how fans interpret an old situation. Whether Rick Ross intentionally reignited old conversations or whether fans simply connected unrelated moments is something only those directly involved truly know. But one fact remains clear. People are paying attention. And as long as audiences continue replaying lyrics, revisiting interviews, and sharing opinions online, the discussion isn't likely to disappear anytime soon. Eventually, both Rick Ross and DC Young Fly will move on to new projects. Another album will be released. Another podcast interview will go viral. Another headline will dominate social media. That's simply how entertainment works. But moments like this remind us why hip-hop remains one of the most discussed genres in the world. It's not only about the music. It's about the stories, the personalities, the rivalries, the interviews, the speculation, and the endless conversations that keep fans invested long after the songs have ended. Whether this situation develops into another public exchange or quietly fades away, only time will reveal the answer. For now, everyone seems to be watching the same question unfold. Will DC Young Fly respond? Or will this simply become another unforgettable chapter in hip-hop history? If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest stories from the world of hip-hop. We cover the biggest headlines, artist updates, industry drama, and viral moments with detailed analysis and original commentary. Now it's your turn to join the conversation. Do you think Rick Ross intentionally referenced DC Young Fly? Or has the internet turned a single lyric into something much bigger than it really is? And if DC decides to respond, should he answer with comedy, a podcast appearance, or surprise everyone with something completely unexpected? Share your thoughts in the comments below because we read them all, and your opinion might even be featured in a future video. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one with another original hip-hop story.